to talk about pronunciation and how teachers can teach pronunciation. And there's three aspects to teaching pronunciation. We have sounds, stress, and rhythm and intonation. So when we're talking about sounds, we're talking about all the different sounds of letters, whether it's a vowel, consonant, or a diphthong. And so we have 26 different letters in the English language, but we have a total of 46 different sounds that these letters can make. So for example, if we take the word cat with that A, the cat makes an A sound, right? But then if we have the word table, it's making an A sound. So there's a difference in the two sounds that the A makes in the two different words. So that's an example of sounds. Also the stress. So this is emphasizing on where the stress is placed on words and syllables. So if we look at this first row, we have Monday, second, airport, and mountain. And if you'll notice, the stress is naturally put on the first syllable. So we say Monday, we don't say Monday, right? Second, airport, mountain. But in this row, the stress is put on the second syllable. So we have remember, prepare, consider. And so in this case, the stress is put on the second syllable. So this is focusing on where the stress goes. And then finally, the rhythm and intonation, which is talking about the timing, speed, and patterns, and the flow of speech. So here we have an example sentence. I ate an apple. So typically a native speaker wouldn't emphasize each word and say, I ate an apple. They would know, they would run these together and say, I ate an apple, like one long word. So it's teaching your students how to listen for that and still be able to understand. And then if we're looking at intonation, I can say, how are you today? Or how are you today? And so the different ways that my voice goes up and down is something that students are going to want to learn as well. So now we're going to practice doing this. So there are several different methods that teachers can use in a classroom to help teach pronunciation. And we're going to go over a couple now. So one of the most beneficial ways is listen and repeat. So a teacher is going to speak or say a sentence or a word, and the student is going to listen and repeat it. They're going to mimic. And it's very important that students watch the teacher's mouth, and they watch how they're forming the words, and they listen, and then they repeat. And this is something that the more practice they have doing it, the better their pronunciation will become. Also focusing on sound contrasts. So have your students listen to you pronounce similar sounding words, and then have them decide which word you're saying. So oftentimes students will confuse CH and SH, the sound of those two. So if we take this, chair and share, chair, share. So the teacher would pronounce the words and then have the students decide which word they were saying. And you can create long word lists and make a game out of it and just practice doing that. Another example would be cut and cat. Cut and cat. And so to a native speaker, these sound very different, but to someone learning the language, they sound quite similar. So being able to have your students differentiate the difference between the two words. Reading out loud is another great way to practice pronunciation. As a student is reading aloud, there are going to be words that they obviously don't know or that they're going to struggle with pronouncing. So having them read out loud will get them comfortable hearing their own voice and comfortable pronouncing. And it's a really great tool to work on pronunciation. And following up with that would be teaching vocabulary with pronunciation. So when you're reading a passage, as soon as a new vocabulary word comes up, you'll teach the vocabulary word, the meaning of it, but then you'll also focus on the pronunciation and have the student practice pronouncing it until they say it perfectly. And again, that's going to cycle us back to the first one, listen and repeat, because the teacher is going to pronounce the word, and the student is going to listen and then repeat it. So these are a couple of different pronunciation tactics that you can use in the classroom. Okay, and some aspects to pronunciation and speech that teachers will notice when they're teaching English is the way that the student uses the speed, volume, breathing, fluency, tone, and an expression. So those are all different components of speaking and pronunciation that you will, as a teacher, practice with your students. And as a final pronunciation practice activity, we have a poem called English is Tough Stuff. And this is a poem that in itself is making fun of how many irregularities there are in English. And we're going to cover just one verse of it. But the full poem is listed in the textbook, and you can read it on page 93 and 94. So this is a fun way to practice some pronunciation with your students. So you can have them read aloud and then practice pronouncing the words. So we have, dearest creature in creation, study English pronunciation. I will teach you in my verse sounds like corpse, core, horse, and worse. And then it continues. And you can see in this just brief amount that we read how there are different words that can be tricky to pronounce because they differ. So check it out and incorporate this into an English lesson that you plan based on pronunciation.